Hey everyone, good to be with you all again each week. This week, I hope you're enjoying these videos. I think they could be helpful for us as we kind of desire to have continuity in what we teach our students, but then also so that we might be equipped. I want to make sure I'm doing a good job of helping you all think through the lesson, helping you all grow as teachers, grow as disciplers. So I think this can help. A real quick update on this Sunday. We will have the event at the beginning of Sunday school, but I don't want to take up the whole time, and so I want you to be able to have at least some time for your class with the lesson. What I'm going to do is just give you a way that you can quickly summarize this week's lesson as you teach your students. There's three little points I think that you can take away of a very powerful story. The story this week is dealing with Jacob, and as he's going through the land, he knows he's going to have to encounter Esau, so he's super worried because obviously you would be too if you stole your birthright from your brother. He's afraid his brother's going to kill him, and so what's he do? He sends his family out first, like any cowardly man, I guess, right? So he sends them out first, as thinking maybe that he'll see his family, see what all he has, and he won't do anything to him. And while he's by himself, in that moment, he begins to wrestle with someone, which we later find out that was God himself, that he begins to wrestle with. And this wrestling match takes all night, and then God tries to leave, and Jacob says, "No, I'm not going to let you leave until you bless me." And it's this really incredible story of where in this moment, God touches Jacob's hip socket, which goes to show that if God really wanted to leave, he could have. He was teaching Jacob a lesson in this moment. He just touches his hip socket, and with that, it puts Jacob's hip out of joint. Something he deals with the rest of his life with a bad hip. And then he changes his name. All right, he changes his name, and in that really changes Jacob, so that when he has an interaction with his brother the next day, Jacob is a completely different person. He's a completely different person. And so what do we see in the story that I think is good for us to take on with us? First, we see that God breaks us to bless us. We see that before God gives the blessing to Jacob, he touches his hip and puts his hip socket out of place. He breaks Jacob in that moment. He takes away his physical ability to run, to be strong in that moment. And what we see sometimes is that breaking is actually a blessing. That breaking is actually a blessing sometimes, because what we see when we look at the scriptures is that the only way that we will realize that we need God is when we realize that he's all that we have. As long as we think that we are still strong, that we are confident in ourselves, we will always look to our strength, our abilities, our giftings to help us out, instead of looking and realizing that we need God. Jacob in this moment realized that he needed God because he had lost all his strength, and it humbled him. See, it's only when we have been made low that we see how much we need God. And what we see is that he breaks us to bless us. This is what happens in the gospel. Jesus Christ came and made himself low, right? Came to this earth, lived a life we can never live, died the death that we deserved, rose again from the grave so that we may have life. But it isn't just a free gift that we do nothing with. No, the way that we receive this is by realizing that we are broken people, that we are sinners headed to hell, and that we need Jesus for life. He breaks us in that moment so that he might bless us with life and with salvation. I think it's a great truth. If we could get teenagers to realize now, it would save them so much heartache in high school, in college, in marriage, all these things, about desiring to have a humble heart before the Lord so that he might work in our lives. So we see that. Second truth we see here is that he changes our name. What does he do with Jacob? He changes Jacob's name. He says, you're no longer going to be called Jacob, but you're going to be called Israel. This was significant because Jacob's name was a picture of who he was as a person. Jacob meant cheater. What did he do? He cheated his brother's way out. That was his whole life. His whole life was defined by his name and his actions. But in this moment, God changes his name to Israel, which means like God wrestler, or fights with God in this moment. Because his name now reflected a realization that Jacob could not cheat his way to everything, that he needed God. He needed God, and now his name was going to be a way for him to remember this truth for the rest of our life. The same thing happens to us. Before Christ, our name is sinner. That's what our name is. And when we trust in Jesus, he changes our name from sinner to saint. And what that saint is not built upon is how great we are, but the saint is built upon the blood of Jesus and who he is.
So that name should always cause us to look to God, not to being ourselves great, but to who God is. Lastly, he not only changes our name, but he also changes our hearts. That when Jacob is broken, he sees God for who he is. It changes everything about him. So much so that when he goes to see his brother Esau in this next in the next part, man, he is a different person. He's humble. He acknowledges his failures. He acknowledges his love for his brother, and in that they are reconciled together. This is the same thing that happens to us when we trust in Jesus. That he changes our hearts. He makes us he helps us want to love him. He causes us to strive farther and to go further with him. So, just some points from the story that we can teach students that God breaks us to bless us, he changes our name, and that he changes our hearts. And I think this is a great story that we can teach students in Jacob. So you can do that quick. I think you can teach that in 15 minutes. There's some other really great questions in the material that you can use to build some discussion that are really kind of heart-piercing questions, which I think will be good for us this week. So other than that, this is the last lesson of this section. And so if you could bring your jump drive on Sunday so that we can upload the new material on there. If you do not have a jump drive or if you lost yours, please let us know and we will bring you one on Sunday for you to have so that we can get you new material. So I love you guys. Thank y'all for all that you do, and let's have a good rest of the week.